Right, let's continue the session with the yesterday example. Yesterday we have discussed how to identify the loss allowance for a financial asset at amortized cost. Right, we have to maintain two accounts in the loss allowance account and the asset account, the loss allowance. You will maintain until it's come to the stage 3 as allowance. Thereafter, you will write off against the asset value. That's about amortized cost asset. Let's see another example. This example about financial asset classified as fair value through OCI. Right, as I told you, there are different journal entries. When you have amortized cost financial asset, the loss allowance will recognize as a provision through P&L. Thereafter, you need to present the loss allowance account as a deduction of the asset in the balance sheet. That is the very important part when you present in figures. I will show you. Yesterday we have computed those figures. Right, this is the figures we have discussed yesterday regarding amortized cost financial asset. Now we need to discuss how you have to present this in the financial statements. If you take the balance sheet, in the balance sheet under the non-current asset, you will take this financial asset, right? The value, let's take for the first year end, that is the balance 48.6. right. Therefore, in the balance sheet under non-current liability, non-current asset, you will present your asset value. Then, since this is amortized cost financial asset, you will present that loss allowance as a deduction from this asset. Is that clear? At the end of the first year, you have loss allowance 1.5 according to the last day example. Therefore, you will recognize your loss allowance as a deduction. Therefore, balance sheet will bring the net value of these two. Right, that is the requirement for amortized cost financial asset. You will recognize loss allowance separately, but when you present it in the balance sheet, you need to reduce loss allowance against the asset value at the face of the balance sheet. Right. Let's take the other example, the fair value through OCI financial asset on debt. Here the same information, face value, interest rate, the maturity period and the investment amount and the effective interest rate is same. In addition to that, the fair value, because this is going to be measured at fair value through OCI, therefore you have the fair values at year end and the loss allowance as same loss allowance in the previous example. Let's see how you have to record this asset. Right, since it is a fair value through OCI financial asset, you need the financial asset account, financial asset at fair value through OCI. Since it is measured at fair value, you need to take additional account, fair value reserve goes through the OCI. In addition to that, you need to recognize additional account for the loss allowance. It will debit into P&L annually, but you are not going to credit as a provision. You recognize as a loss allowance in other comprehensive income. This is a loss allowance account, but it will be presented in the other comprehensive income. You have invested 48 initially in the asset, right, at cash. Then even though it is fair value through OCI, you will recognize interest income on the amortized value. When you identify the asset, expected loss also identified at the same time. At the same time, you need to recognize the expected loss, P&L debit, loss allowance credit, that is OCI account credit 1 million according to that example. Clear? Then you will take the year end. You need to calculate the interest income at 11.67 effective interest rate, that is interest income in profit and loss. Right? It will be 5.6, but you received cash 5 million. Now you will take the year end balance. Right? When you take the year end balance, you cannot take that amortized value, since you are going to record this at fair value. The fair value given as 49.6. Clear? It is 49.6. That will be the carried down value and brought forward value for the next year, 49.6. With these changes, you know you have that value increased by 0.6. That 0.6 recognized in other comprehensive income as a reserve. Therefore, this is from financial asset fair value gain. 0.6 will recognize in other comprehensive income. Right? Same time, the loss allowance has been valued at the first year end, and carried down value according to question would be 1.5 and brought forward also 1.5. Therefore, that provision need to be increased by 0.5, will charge into profit and loss. This is the OCI account, right, not a provision account. Then you can balance this account also. The closing balance carried down 0.6 and brought forward will be 0.6. Right? Now we have to discuss how we are going to present in these figures in the financial statements. Let's take the statement of financial position first. Statement of financial position. You will take non-current assets. This asset, fair value through OCI financial asset. Financial asset will be presented at 0.9.6. That's all. You are not going to reduce this loss allowance from the asset account, since it is fair value through OCI. That is the difference when you compare with the amortized cost financial asset. Then you need to present another two accounts in the balance sheet. Both are OCI accounts. Therefore, you will take equity. Under equity, you will present fair value reserve of financial asset, right, that is 0.6, credit balance, and loss allowance also recognize here 1.5. Now see the difference. If this is an amortized cost financial asset, you will reduce this loss allowance from the asset, but here you are not going to reduce it. You will recognize loss allowance separately under the equity, since it is credited into the OCI. Is that clear? That's the main difference. Then in the P&L you recognize this, right? If you take statement of P&L and other comprehensive income, statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, under the P&L you will recognize interest income as 5.6 gain. Then under other comprehensive income category you will recognize this both. Clear? Fair value gain 0.6, loss allowance 1.5. That's how you need to present your financial statements at the end of the first year. In addition to that, you will recognize your cash flow, cash inflow 5, and cash outflow at the purchase of the asset. Is that clear? This is the most important part, because in the exam there may be a question to compare what would be the impact if you classify the purchase loan and amortized cost or at fair value through OCI. You may require to explain the impact to the financial statements. Is that clear? If you classify this as amortized cost, loss allowance will be reduced from the asset, but now here loss allowance and fair value gain both will be recognized under equity. Therefore, there is an impact to the gearing ratio. Got it? That's the most important part. There is a huge impact to the gearing ratio, because gearing ratio may be decrease or increase with this figure. Since this is a plus, equity will increase. If it is a minus, equity will decrease. But with the amortized cost method, no impact to the gearing, because you will recognize on the asset. Is that clear? Right. Let's move into the presentation again, because entire questions explain on the worksheet. This is the calculation as we discussed earlier example, the fair value through OCI financial asset. You will calculate your interest income always on the amortized value, but you will adjust it for the fair value at the end. Meantime, you will recognize your loss allowance. Here, year by year you have double entries, right? When you purchase the asset, financial asset debit, right, cash credit here, financial asset debit, cash credit at the purchase, double entry. Thereafter you at the same time when you, this is purchase entry, from this line above the purchase entry, I think you can easily understand the purchase of asset, financial asset debit, cash credit, same time expected loss 1 million, recognize P&L debit, OCI credit. Got it? OCI credit. Here all bracket figures explaining the credit entry, right? Don't think it as a minus, credit entry. Debit entry taken as a plus, credit entry taken within the bracket. Got it? Now from this point on above, the purchase of financial asset and the loss allowance entry. The important point, loss allowance entry, right? P&L debit, loss allowance, OCI credit. Then you will recognize your interest for the first year, right? This is your interest entry. Asset debit 5.6, P&L credit, that's why I told you that credit entry represent within the bracket, P&L credit 5.6. Thereafter you need to identify the cash receipt 5 million, coupon interest, cash debit, financial asset credit. Got it? Finally you need to restate your asset into the fair value. There is a fair value gain of 0.6, asset debit, OCI credit again, OCI credit again, right? Not only that, when it's come to the year end, again you have reassess your loss allowance, therefore it should be increased another by 0.5, P&L debit, OCI credit. Finally year end balances is given here. Financial assets should be presented in the balance sheet 49.2 as we discussed on the board, right? Then OCI adjustments, you have two OCI adjustments, fair value gain of 0.6 as well as the loss allowance made 1.5. Got it? Likewise it has been prepared for the second year. I think you can watch the video, right, and the third year. Now at the end of the third year, you know you have a loss allowance to reverse, no issue, you will reverse it back to the profit and loss as we discussed in the amortized cost. Is that clear? Therefore in the identification of loss allowance, the difference is you are not going to identify the loss allowance for fair value through P&L, no issue. Why? It is automatically identified the loss allowance in the P&L. But amortized cost and fair value through OCI, debt instrument, you require to identify the loss allowance. Only difference is in amortized cost, you will recognize loss allowance as a reduction of the asset in the balance sheet. For fair value through OCI, you will recognize separately under the equity. Is that clear? Right. Let us move into the example number 3. This is actually with foreign currency, right? Foreign currency instrument. Let us take later on because it is only about the foreign currency adjustment. We will take another direct example for impairment. Let us take this, right? Company X invested in a bond. The bond has an issue value of 1 million and pays a coupon rate of 5% interest for 2 years and 7% interest for another 2 years. So you have varying rate. First 2 years you have 5% on the coupon value of 1 million. Second 2 years you have 7%. That means first year you have coupon interest 5% means 50,000. Am I correct? Second year also you have 50,000. But third year and fourth year you will have 70,000. Is it clear? Interest is paid annually on anniversary of the bond issue. The bond will be redeemed at par after 4 years. The effective interest rate already calculated as 5.942. Clear? At the end of the second year, it's become apparent that, it's a nice example, right? Now, better to have this information first you onto sheets, right? Write down 4-year bond. Now, I don't know how you are going to take it into the books of accounts, sorry, as your short notes, but I will tell you how you have to take it down, right? when you summarize a question, don't just write down the information, right? This is a story about the timing, with the timing effect, right? Like this, summarize the question. You have 4-year bond. This is the way you have to summarize. You have 4-year bond, right? The face value 1 million. Let's take in 1,000 rupees. First year interest 5%, second year 5%, third year 7%, fourth year also 7%, right? Coupon rate is this, coupon rate, but effective interest rate as given 5.942. Clear? According to the coupon rate, you require to collect 50,000 as interest income, 50,000 as interest income, 70,000 as interest income, and 70,000 as interest income. These are the expected future cash flows. At the end of the 4th year, you will have the par value at the redemption. This is the amount you have invested at this date, at year 0, right? Year 0, these are the future cash flows. Got it? Let's take the balance information. At the end of the second year, it's become apparent that the issuer has financial difficulties and it is estimated that company X will only receive 60% in the dollar for future cash flows. At the end of the second year, you have realized issuer has financial difficulties. Personally, now he pays difficulties. That means issuer, we are the investor, investee drop into that stage 3. He faced financial difficulties. We are the investor. Issuer is the investee who is responsible to pay for us. When he facing financial difficulties, the meaning of that, he dropped into the stage 3 of the impairment timeline. Stage 3 means you require to recognize the impairment as a reduction of the asset value. This was happened at the end of the first year. Is that clear? Right. Therefore, at the end of the second year, up to the second year end, it is continuing under the normal circumstances. Clear? Okay, let's take here. Now, up to the second year end, we can prepare this account. Got it? I just calculate here. I know you are advanced students, CFR. Therefore, no need to follow always the T-shape accounts, right? Open balance 1,000. We had 1,000. The effective interest rate 5.942, right? That will be 59,420. Am I correct? Let's take in total values 1 million. Interest will be adjusted for the first year 59,420 at effective interest rate. But you will receive 50,000 in cash. Got it? Therefore, net increase of the asset will be 9,420. Therefore, end of the first year, the asset value would be 1,059,420. Is that clear? That would be the balance, right? At the end of the first year, 1,009,420, because the net increase of the asset only 9,000, because effective interest rate is this, cash received only this, right? Now, when it's come to the second year, again you will consider, right? You will consider the interest. Interest will be 5% on this. Is that clear? 5% on opening balance of the second year. 5% on opening balance of the second year will be, just checked, 59,983. Is it correct? More close figure. But again in the second year you will receive in cash 50,000. Got it? Therefore, net increase again how much? 9,983. Therefore, at the end of the second year, this is first year balance 1,09,420 first year balance. Second year end balance would be 1,19,407. This plus this is that 403 according to here, right? If you calculate exactly, is this 4? Then this should be 4 and this should be 4. If it is 4, this becomes 7 because with this 3. Clear? Right. Now this is the second year financial asset. Now this day is the most important day for us because we realize the issuer of this bond face financial difficulties, therefore he should be subjected to the impairment. Impairment, what is the meaning of impairment? You will compare your carrying value with the recoverable value of the asset. Now you exactly know this is your carrying value. Is that clear? This is your carrying value. Now to recognize impairment, what you need to do, you need to calculate recoverable value. Recoverable value easily calculate here through value in use. Value in use means the present value of future expected cash flows. These are the only two future expected cash flows in this scenario because now you are here. This is you. You are thinking what you are going to do now, right? You are faced like this because you face impairment of your asset. Clear? Now you are thinking your future. Your future is only these two. Your future is only these two. Let's calculate the present value of these cash flows. Exactly, you know, you will be able to collect 60% of the cash flows according to the question due to the impairment. You know from this also you will be able to collect 60% of the cash flows, right? That is, you will collect only here 60%, how much? 42,000. Here 60% means 642,000. These are only cash flows you can collect out of these two, right? With that impairment, let's take the question again. Here they have mentioned at the end of the second year. Here at the end of the second year, you identified issuer has faced difficulties, that is there may be an impairment, right? You will be able to collect only 60 cents from $1, that is 60%. Is that clear? 60 cents because per dollar you have 60 cents, 100 cents, right? Am I correct? Or 1,000 cents, 100 cents. Therefore, when you collect 60 cents from $1 means you will be able to collect only 60%, right? Okay, let's take this again. Now you will be able to collect from next year 42,000 and next last year 642,000, including both the capital and interest, right? Now to calculate the recoverable value will be present value of these two. Discount these two values using the effective interest rate. This is only for 1 year, therefore this need to be multiplied by 1 divided by 1.05942 power 1. Agreed? That is first year discounting factor. This is the first year discounting factor for this 42,000. This is second year, therefore this need to be discounted by 1 divided by 1.05942 power 2. Clear? Then you will discount and you will be able to collect only, the value would be 611,666. This is the recoverable value you will be able to collect. Is it clear? right? The present value of these future cash flows at the effective interest rate will be 611,666. This is the recoverable value, this is the carrying value. Impairment equal carrying value minus recoverable value. Carrying value was 1,019,407, recoverable value 611,666. Therefore, you have impairment loss equal to 407,741. Is that clear? This is the impairment loss calculated at stage 3. Is that clear? Therefore, what you require to do, you need to write off this against the asset. Got it? Now, I will show you the double entries on the relevant ledger accounts. Shall I erase this? Okay, from here I will erase these figures. Right. The financial asset account, right? You had a carrying value at the end of second year end, right? At the end of second year, your carrying value was 1,019,407 after 2 years, right? Third year opening balance, or not third year opening balance. I will show it to you. Let's take from the beginning because there is some complications, right? From the beginning, you invested on cash 48, recognize income in P&L 1 million. You invested on 1 million, recognize interest income 59,424, collected cash in the first year 50,000. Therefore, you had a carrying down value, brought forward value 1,09,424, 1,09,424. This was the first year story. When it's come to the second year, see, this is the most crucial point. When it's come to the second year, you recognize your interest income in P&L. It was how much? Can you tell me? Second year interest was 983. You collected cash for the second year again 50,000, right? According to that, your carrying value would be 1,019,407, carried down value. Now, that would be the brought forward balance, right? But you cannot brought forward it. The reason is, on this day, not this day. Don't take to adjust the impairment to this date. Why? Impairment need to be adjusted for the second year. If you bring this balance into here and adjust it, it will be recognized in the third year. It is wrong. You need to recognize impairment loss in the second year. This is carrying value, but assessment of recoverable value Z, this value would be not the carrying value, that value would be the recoverable value since there is an impairment. Therefore, balance would be this. Is that clear? Recoverable value less than carrying value, therefore, you will take recoverable value as the carrying value. With that, you have a loss. That loss equal to 407,741. Once you recognize this, immediately you have to see whether you have loss allowance account now. If you have a loss allowance account, first of all, you will charge this into loss allowance account. If no, then you will take balance into the profit and loss. Is that clear? If you have a loss allowance, first charge into the loss allowance and set off it. Any remaining balance of the loss, charge into profit and loss. That's why I divide into this divide into two. First part taken into the loss allowance debit side, right? Then balance loss charge into profit and loss. Is that clear? That's how you need to recognize loss allowance at the stage 3. Clear? Right. Now example 1 taken for loss allowance in stage 1 and 2 for amortized cost financial asset. Example 2, I am talking under the impairment topic, right? Example 1 taken yesterday evening for amortized cost financial asset loss allowance. Then today beginning I have taken example 2 for impairment fair value through OCI. But both discuss under up to stage 2. We didn't recognize any loss against the asset since both example 1 and 2 talk about stage 1 and 2. But in this example, this is amortized cost financial asset that issuer dropped up to stage 3. Therefore, we have recognized impairment against the asset. We write off against the asset, but that reduction shall be charged into loss allowance first. Any remaining balance charge into profit and loss. Thereafter, new balance will be the recoverable value. Then from the third year onward, you will recognize interest using effective interest rate on this. Clear? And cash will receive only 42,000 in the third. Then you will summarize and taken into the next year. This year you have cash 642,000. You will take open balance and recognize effective interest rate on that. Finally, account will be closed. Is that clear? Right. It has been presented in the sheet also. Here, as I explained, this is the carrying value at the end of the second year, correct? Carrying value at the end of the second year. This is the recoverable value calculation, third year and fourth year expected cash flows. Only 60% will be able to collect. Therefore, these are the real cash flows you will be collected after impairment. Will be discounted to have the recoverable value. This is the recoverable value, but this is the carrying value. Therefore, you have an impairment. You will recognize that impairment in the loss allowance and the P&L. Total will write off against the asset. Thereafter, from the this would be third year, right? Sorry, and this would be fourth year. This is the third year opening balance. Using effective interest rate, this is the interest income, but you receive 42,000 in cash. This is the closing balance. When it comes to the fourth year opening balance, you recognize using effective interest rate on the opening balance interest income, and you will receive 642,000, both principal and interest. Account will be closed. Is that clear? Right. Here this is an example. If you have loss allowance account of 100,000 balance, assume, right? In the same example, assume you have loss allowance balance 100,000. Out of the total loss credit into the financial asset, first you charge into loss allowance, balance will charge into profit and loss. It's just an presentation how to distribute among the P&L and loss allowance, assuming you had 100,000 loss allowance balance, right? Then we will move into another example. That's about not a bond or loan note, it's about debtors, right? This is an example to recognize loss allowance for the debtors, right? Example number 6. Here XPLC has total trade receivable 30 million. This is trade receivable 30 million. You know this 30 million not represent the debtors who created today or yesterday or day before yesterday. These debtors were created over a period. Therefore, these debtors can be splitted into different age categories, that is the age analysis. According to the SLFRS 9, you require to divide these debtors into the 8 categories, that's called buckets, age buckets, right? Then based on the past experience for each bucket, you require to identify common rate for impairment, right? Here they have given the current only 0.3% will write off, 1 day to 30 days due, 1.6 you will write off, 31 to 60 days due, 3.6 you will write off. Likewise, you will write off for each bucket separately. Now, I know you have a question how to decide this rate. That rate shall be decided by the entity. Is that clear? Because entity knows how their debtors reacted. Every time they know that. They have historic data and they have the current situation of the market and they know what would be the future. Therefore, considering current data, future situation and the past information, you must decide what would be the rate. In the exam, definitely examiner will give you the rate because you do not have time to decide this matrix. That need to be prepared by the management and will give it to you. Now, based on this, what you need to do? You need to allocate your 30 million debtors among each age categories. Sometimes examiner will give, sometimes not sometimes, always examiner need to give the categories also, otherwise you do not have information to divide it into different categories. If you have at least the date that data created, you can easily put them into the buckets, but in the exam they are not expecting to do that, they will give you. Therefore, what you need to do, take the age categories in each bucket, number of debtors in each bucket, then use the rates you developed early and identify the amount you need to provide. Is that clear? Therefore, you need to make a provision for 580,000. Question earlier mentioned opening balance of provision 500,000. Now, you have calculated closing balance 580,000. Therefore, now you know you have to make a 80,000 provision, P&L debit, provision credit, right? This is the double entry. Okay. This is the basic requirement of impairment, right, in different financial assets. Let us take few other examples from this presentation. This is the presentation I told presented yesterday about the 3 stages of impairment. We have an example to identify these 3 stages. Right, let us take this example. Right, this is an ACC example, but through this example you can easily understand how we can determine the debtor, the receivable balance and their relevant stage of impairment. Creditor bank operate in a south zone, a region in which clothing manufacturing is a significant industry. Now, that bank operates in a region, that region highly specialized for garment factories. The bank provide personal loans and mortgage in region. They are giving loans to the customers. The average loan to value ratio for its mortgage loan 75%. All loan applicants are required to provide information regarding the industry in which they are employed. Question earlier mentioned that area highly specialized in garment factories. If the application is for a mortgage, the customer must provide the postcode of the property which is to serve as a collateral for mortgage loan. Creditor bank applies expected credit loss model in IFRS 9. The bank tracks the probability of customer default by reference to the overdue status records. In addition, it is required to consider forward-looking information as far as the information is available. Creditor bank has become aware that, take that information seriously, Creditor bank has become aware that a number of clothing manufacturers, they are not talking about their customers, right, but they are in an area which is specialized for garment factories. Now, they are talking about garment factories, however, their customers work in there. Number of garment factories are losing revenue and profit now as a result of competition from abroad, and that several are expected to close. Now, you are the bank, you give a loan to the customers, customers are working in the garment factories. Now, you are getting information regarding the situation of the factories where that your customers working. More companies going to be closed. Is it a default or going to be default? It is an implication of default, right? It is an implication of default, not actual default. Therefore, you cannot put them into this stage 3. Again, you can't take him to this stage 1 because now you are getting information. Is that clear? Since you have to take them into the stage 2, you have to recognize their lifetime loss, but still you will recognize the loss allowance since it is in the stage 2. The answer also given here, it should be taken into stage 2. because you are getting information. Clear? Now, I have prepared my own example. Don't take this mistakenly, right? But I will give you, you can easily keep your mind these 3 stages. Assume you had a 20 years love affair. I am talking to gentlemen, right? You had a 20 years love affair, but suddenly it was broken. Now you are going to be married with a girl proposed by your parent. You just married, right? You just married. You and your wife living in a forest. You and your wife are the only human beings in that forest. Nobody there, right? You just married. But you know, girls cannot be, you cannot rely always on girls, because you had a bad experience. You lose your 20 years love affair. Due to that experience, you know you can have the same result from your newly married wife. Why you think like this? You are not going to ask from her, are you going to leave me? You are not going to ask from her. But you know, your mind knows. Why? You had the experience. But you are not going to ask from her. But you keeping it to your mind. You always trying to, you are always suffering due to the past experience. That is why stage 1. You have new thing, not yet suffered, no indication of suffering, but you have past bad experience. Therefore, in your mind, you have a provision. I am not relying 100% on her. Clear? Okay. Few months later, you will back to the village. Not your village, wife's village. Now you are every day morning walking to the office and working to the house again evening. Now you are getting people, you are meeting people of the village, those who are the friends of your wife. They are telling some gossips about the wife. Clear? Right? One day you will meet one of the famous friend of your wife, Gunadasa Kapuge. Then he will tell you, now you are getting that, like this information about wife. You had that bad experience, therefore you kept a provision in your mind. Now you are getting information, not directly from the wife, right? You didn't detect anything, but you are getting information now from the around her. Now that wife assumed as a financial asset. Now you are getting information from the third parties. Therefore, you will increase your provision in your mind. Now reliability will further reduce, but you are not going to ask from her. Is that clear? Now your provision will expand in your mind. Doubt will expand in your mind. Clear? Then one day evening, you will catch her with another husband. Now you are dropped into the stage 3. You will write off the asset. You will divorce her. The same story you have to apply for the financial asset. Due to the bad image, due to the past experience you had, you know this type of things may be default. That's why you will put them into the stage 1 and recognize early a provision, expected loss. Is that clear? Then when you are getting information about the financial asset, you will put them into the stage 2 and recognize lifetime loss, but as a provision. When actually catch it, you will make a write-off. Now you have a question, not at least on the financial asset. Take your real life story, your wife. Don't you have a question? Please ask. What is the question you have to ask from me? Sir, what would be happen if a boy married a girl very first time without a love affair? Don't you have that question? Now I told you a question. A boy married a girl after breaking 20 years love affair. Therefore, he make a provision in his mind. He was on alert. But assume there was a boy who spent his entire life with parents. This is the very first time he is in a girl, he married her. Now do he has a provision in his mind? No, because he does not have any experience. This is the very first time he is seen a girl, right? This same thing happened to newly established financial institutions. Take Cargill's Bank, right? Cargill's Bank, a simple example. Do they have more experiences, more information about the past? Then how they are doing it? That's why Standard told you, don't take only the past information. Think about the current situation and forecast the future. Here, in this question, the bank takes the probability of customer default by reference to the overdue status records, past information. In addition, it is required to consider forward-looking information. Even you have experience of your previous girlfriend, don't make a provision, more provision for the wife, because Standard also asks you to not to depend only on the historical data. Take a mix of both historical data and the forward looking information. Got it? Now I think you clearly taking the 3 stage of impairment. Am I correct? I am asking from you. Right. Then let us take next situation. Later in the year, the same creditor bank story, right? Later in the year, more information emerge. You previously received only the drop down of the manufacture, that garment industry. Now you are getting additional information, and creditor bank was able to identify the particular loans that defaulted, actually defaulted by the customers. Now don't wait for the write off the asset. Therefore, you will take your asset into the stage 3, since it is actually defaulted. Got it? Right. That is how you have to apply stage 3. Clear? Right. Next example. Debitor bank applies the expected credit loss impairment model of IFRS 9. 30th September 2014, the bank approved a total of 10 million overdraft facility, which have not yet been drawn. You know, overdraft facility is not a loan, a facility to utilize the loan, right? Therefore, once you approved a loan for OD, you cannot make a provision until they utilize it, right? Without utilizing, you cannot make a provision, right? That is the different of the that is the point, differentiate OD from other loans. Debitor bank considers that 8 million in stage 1. Out of 10 million you allowed, 8 million in stage 1. That is no significant increase in credit risk. If it is in stage 1, you require to recognize only next 12-month loss, not the lifetime loss. Of that 8 million in stage 1, 4 million is expected to be drawn within next 12 months. Out of the entire loan OD, 8 million in stage 1, but customer will utilize only 4 million out of this 8. If it is in a stage 1, you require to recognize only the 12-month loss. Next 12 months, they are going to utilize only 4 million. That provision would be 3%, probability of 3% of default over the next 12 months. Then on what you need to make a provision of 3%? 8%, 8 million or 4 million? Only 4 million. 8 million in stage 1, but next 12 months they will utilize only 4. You will recognize only 12-month loss. Therefore, maximum loss will be 4 million. But your probability is 3%. Therefore, on 4 million, you will recognize 3% as a provision. Clear? Then balance 2 million in stage 2, right? When it comes to the stage 2, you will recognize lifetime loss the percentage is 10%, therefore 2 million into 10%. Is that clear? Therefore, total provision would be 320,000. Is that clear? What you need to take here, 8 million in stage 1, but in next 12 months they will utilize only 4 million. Therefore, 12-month expected credit loss only provided for 4 million, not 8 million, because maximum possible loss will be 4 million. Is that clear? Again, this is an example for trade receivable. You can see easily the bucket is given, right, and the percentage for each bucket is given. Got it? I am not going to read these things. This is the sales made. Creditco sold good to credit, to debtco 200,000, receivable debit, revenue credit 200,000. That is the first entry, right? Then the debtco has credit limit with creditco 60 days. They are applying IFRS 9 expected credit loss, therefore they will make a provision like this, right? Now this out of 200,000, right, how much they not yet paid? Their credit period is 60 days, right? Here your sales was occurred on 1st June 2014. Is that clear? What is the allowed period to pay? 2 months, June and July. When you reach 31st July, here your given period will lapse. Got it? Therefore, 1st August onward you will start to count the due. Clear? When you are at 31st July, already 30 days passed. Your entire debtor will drop into 1 to 30 bucket. Due. Until 60 days covered, no due, nil, because you have given 60 days to pay. Clear? Now you are in 31st July, after 60 days. This is not yet paid it, not yet paid, right? Therefore, entire debtor goes to the first level of the bucket, that is 5%. 5% on 200,000, only 10,000. Have they paid 5%? Loss provision 5%, that is 10,000. Yeah, there may be a question, right? They have made a provision yet. Right, here you have to note down in this question, please note it down, right? I have ignored that figures. When this is, then the sales occurred 1st June, right? 200,000, you need to recognize expected loss in the same day. Once you recognize the asset, you have to recognize the loss first. When you recognize the asset in the very first day, it is not due bucket, not due bucket, it is in not due bucket. When it is on the not due bucket, it is nil. When it is in nil, you need to make a provision 1%. Is that clear? Therefore, when you made the sale same time, you need to recognize the provision of 1%. 1% is 2,000. Therefore, in the very first day, you have two double entries. Debit debtors, credit revenue 200,000, debit P&L, credit provision 2,000. Is that clear? The expected loss. Then when it's complete the 60 days, it is automatically goes to the second level of bucket. Then you need to make a provision 5%. 5% of 200,000 is 10,000. But you already made a 2,000 provision. Therefore, you need to make an additional 8,000 provision at the 60 days end. Is that clear? Right. Because I missed that expected loss at the beginning. When you made the sale, same times you have to make a provision of 1%, 2,000. Thereafter, when they complete that 60 days as mentioned here, right, you need to take them into the second level of bucket, that 5%, right? That is 10,000. Since you already made a 2,000, you require to make only balance 8,000 provision at the end. Is that clear? But as I forgot, you may lose to make a provision at the beginning, right? Keep your mind in IFRS 9. At the time you recognize the financial asset, you require to make a provision. Is that clear? We are, as my previous example, we are always losing that provision. Clear? At the time you recognize the asset, you have to make a small provision in your mind, right? When we are getting new financial asset, always we are forgetting to make that provision. Don't do at the exam, right? Try to keep in your mind. At the same time you recognize the initial recognition of the financial asset, recognize the provision. Then when you recognize the provision at the initial stage, it always in the nil bucket, not overdue bucket. Then when it's moving to bucket, you need to increase your provision. Is that clear? Then 31 days to 60 days, here 1 to 30 days means now you sold it 1st June, you completed 60 days up to 31st July, then you have increased up to 5%, therefore you have made a additional 8,000 provision. Assume that is 1 month period. Now you assume you have completed 1 month period without collecting that data. Now you are at 31st August. When you come at 31st August, it automatically drop into the 3rd bucket, 31 to 60 days. Then you require to make a provision of 15%. 15% on 200,000 is 30,000. You already made a 10,000 provision. Therefore, you need to increase another 20,000. Is that clear? Likewise, when it's moving to bucket, you require to increase the provision. That's how you have to apply on the sales debtors. Clear? Right. That is the end of impairment example. Now we need to move into the most important part of the IFRS 9 introduction, that is classification and measurement of financial liabilities. Right? Classification and measurement of financial liability. Only special thing introduced here in the financial liability. Before explain this, I will recap again what I have discussed yesterday and today up to now. Friday evening I have explained the theoretical aspects of the financial liability classification, financial asset classification and the initial recognition, right. Then yesterday I have summarized all the theoretical aspects on the board, how to apply, remeasure, initial measure, day one gain or loss and everything. Now today up to this level we have discussed how to identify the impairment loss on financial asset. Now we have to discuss the financial liability, right. Financial liability according to the IFRS 9 will be classified only at amortized cost, but under special circumstances you will classify that fair value through P&L. Therefore you don't have an option to measure at fair value through OCI, right. Better to summarize that paragraph 4.2. Take chapter 4.2, 4.1 financial asset, 4.2 financial liabilities, right, classification of financial liabilities. It's clearly mentioned, an entity shall classify all financial liabilities and subsequently measured at amortized cost. That's the way. Is that clear? All financial liabilities shall be measured and classified at amortized cost, except these circumstances. How many circumstances you have? A, B, C, D. 5 circumstances, right. In these 5 circumstances you can measure your financial liability at fair value through P&L. Otherwise you will measure it at amortized cost. Let's see that are the circumstances, right. Number 1, is that clear? Generally, financial liabilities will be measured at amortized cost, but under 5 circumstances explained in the standard, you can measure it at fair value through P&L. That means no OCI option, right? What is the first circumstance where you can measure fair value through P&L? Financial liability at fair value through P&L, such liabilities including derivatives that are liabilities shall be subsequently measured at fair value. That derivatives, right? Number 2, financial liabilities that arises when a transfer of a financial asset does not qualify for derecognition or when the continuing involvement approach applies, as explained in 3.2.15 and 3.2.17. Just read it, right? The next circumstance, financial guarantee contracts. D, commitment to provide loan at a below market interest rate. Why? When you given a loan, commitment to provide a loan at a below market interest rate, an issuer of such commitment shall subsequently measure it at the higher of the amount of the loss allowance determined in accordance with section 5.5, the amount initially recognized, less when appropriate the cumulative amount of income recognized. Simple example, say like this, some financial asset from the investor side not satisfying SPPI. Is that clear? Think about the investor side. You face some financial asset on debt not satisfying SPPI. If it is not satisfying SPPI, or even it satisfies SPPI, when it's come to the other category of the business model, other than hold to collect and sell, those instruments will be measured at fair value through P&L. Then same time, the issuer will measure it at fair value through P&L. Is that clear? That is the one circumstance. The contingent consideration, according to SLFRS 3, the contingent consideration shall be measured at fair value through P&L. Why? Contingent consideration also in the issuer side. Issuer, those who sell shares, will receive the contingent consideration, but it is not satisfying SPPI. Why? SPPI means solely payment of principal and interest. Contingent consideration, you don't know whether you will receive at least the principal. It's contingent, depend on uncertain events. Therefore, investor definitely will be measured at fair value through P&L. The liability holder also measured at fair value through P&L, right? Now, what you need to learn here, this examples of financial liabilities that are likely to be classified and measured at fair value, measured at amortized cost and fair value through P&L include. These are the examples under SLFRS 9. What are the financial liabilities come under amortized cost, and what are the financial liabilities come under fair value through P&L? Let's take trade payable, amortized cost, loan payable with standard interest rate, bank borrowings, generally applied borrowing, amortized cost, fair value through P&L. Can you remember? Derivatives will be measured at fair value, interest rate swaps, commodity futures, foreign exchange futures and future contracts. Is that clear? All our derivatives will be measured at fair value through P&L. Convertible notes designated at fair value through P&L. Contingent consideration. What is this convertible notes? It's a nice story, right? I will take to explain, because you may be the advisor sometimes to the entity. Say convertible bond. Convertible bond. Issuer, that is borrower. Investor here. Lender. He will issue note they will pay cash and buy it. He has a financial asset, simply asset for his books of account, a liability including equity characteristics. It's a compound instrument for them. Is that clear? It's a liability including equity characteristics. Am I correct? Compound. That's why we call it hybrid instrument. Compound. Is that clear? Right. The investor will recognize the financial asset. Clear? Generally, convertible bonds repay principal or shares. Agreed? Repay at the maturity. Convertible bonds will give you, assume you are the investor. At the maturity, you will receive principal in cash or number of shares. Therefore, holder will receive cash or right to become a shareholder. Not solely for principal. You are not getting principal always. You may be receive shares. Another side, the interest rate attached to this type of bonds lower the market rate. Agreed? That's a general acceptance. Convertible bonds having a lower interest rate when comparing to the other bonds which haven't convertible option. Therefore, as the investor, can you receive solely principal and interest? Can or can't? Can't. Is this satisfying SPPI? Tell me. Not satisfying SPPI. If it is not satisfying SPPI, no option for the investor, only measure at fair value through P&L now. But IAS 39 had the option, bifurcation option or fair value option. Now, IFRS 9, you shall measure it at fair value through P&L since it is not satisfying SPPI as the investor. Clear? Now, we are talking about financial liability. Our topic is financial liabilities. Here, you have to do like this. You need to see whether you can bifurcate or not. What is bifurcate or not? Separate or not? This is a compound instrument. As a note, you have given a document to the investor. Document. What is the name of this document you given to them? What's the document, the certificate you given? What is the name of this document? Convertible bond certificate. Is that clear? This is a certificate called convertible bond. Is that clear? Right. Therefore, agreement in financial instrument is an agreement, right? Right. Contract. The contract between borrower and lender for what? Bond. Bond agreement. It has a additional name, convertible, but original agreement for a bond. Agreed? Right. Therefore, this original agreement is a bond. It called host contract, main contract. This is the main contract. Is that clear? Within this contract, you have a clause. Only one clause you have mentioned what? You have an option to receive ordinary shares. You have an option. Is it clear? As the investor, assume this is you. This is me. Tell me what you have bought. What you have bought? An option or bond certificate? Tell me what you have bought. You have purchased a bond certificate. But within the bond certificate, you have an option. Option means derivative. Got it? Therefore, this bond included a derivative, embedded derivative. Derivative embedded to the bond. It's an embedded derivative now. option is a derivative, right? Derivative included in the bond. Therefore, you must see, can you separate option from host contract, or can't you? Clear? See whether you can separate option from the host contract. See whether you can take it out. Is that clear? How you can take it out? By discounting all future cash flow from prevailing market interest rate, you will get the present value of liability. Balance will take as the equity instrument. Remember the same practice you had. See, can you separate like that? Or see, can't you separate it? If you can separate, what you need to do? Separate it first. Suraj. Right? If you can separate host contract means the bond certificate. Bond, it is the financial liability. Host contract is the financial liability, will be measured at amortized cost. Is that clear? The equity component, option, the option part is the option equity component, will be measured at fair value. Is that clear? But if you cannot separate entire instrument, because now you can separate, entire will be measured at fair value through P&L. Is that clear? In the borrower's side. Got it? Now see here. Suraj. Convertible loan notes liability is designated at fair value through P&L. Why designated at fair value through P&L? Since you cannot bifurcate the option from the host contract, entire instrument will be measured at fair value through P&L. Is that clear? If you bifurcate it, host contract will be measured at amortized cost, equity option will take under the fair value. But if you can't bifurcate, it is always keeping together fair value through P&L. Is that clear? And finally, fair value through P&L financial liability is the contingent consideration payable. Parents' books of accounts, it will be measured at fair value through P&L, not at amortized cost. Is that clear? Right. Therefore, these are the example for amortized cost financial liabilities and fair value through P&L financial liability. Then the next topic of the financial liability, this is an important topic of financial liability, changes in own credit risk. Is it clear? This is the new part introduced specially in IFRS 9. It has been explained here. In a major change from IAS 39, the new guidance on the IFRS 9 requires when an entity designate a financial liability at fair value through P&L. Now what we are going to learn here, it will be applied only in fair value through P&L category. This new topic we are going to learn, it's a subtopic under financial liability, but will only apply for fair value through P&L category. Is that clear? Right. The changes in fair value that relate to changes in the entity's own credit status are normally presented in other comprehensive income instead of P&L. That's the story, but it will take time to understand. I will explain on the board, right? Now this is only applicable for fair value through P&L financial liabilities. That is a very important point you need to keep in mind, right? Let's take simple example. Assume you have a financial liability. You issued bond, 30,000 worth bond at year 0. That means you collected cash. You agreed to pay 5% interest per annum and redeem at par, right? After 2 years. At the end of the first year, you required to pay 1,500 interest. At the end of the second year, you required to pay 1,500 interest. and you will pay 30,000 capital also, right. You decided to measure this financial liability at fair value through P&L, that is your decision, board decision, according to SLFRS 9. Fair value measurement is according to SLFRS 30. You can take level 1 information, that means you have to see what is the active market for this bond and take the market price. Is that clear? Now you require to measure the bond on this day, assume now you are at the end of the first year, right? You need to measure, you have a question now how to measure, right, at the end of the first year. SLFRS 13 is the guideline. Go to direct market and see whether you have active market for this bond and see the price. In Sri Lanka it cannot accept because we don't have active market for bonds actually. Even our share market also not active market because few investors handling the entire market. Clear? Right. Don't take these as theoretical points, right? Just examples. Otherwise you will write it down on the answer script. Right? Okay. Now you need to measure this. Now what we can do? Go for a level 2 information. Do you have similar asset? No. Therefore best option is to go for a level 3. What is the level 3? Present value of the future cash flows. This is the only future cash flows you have. Discount it. From what? Current, that is fair value. Fair value not talk about history or future, talk about the current situation. Current interest rate. Say current interest rate is 6% at the market. Therefore discount this by current interest rate. Tell me the value. This is the fair value at the end of the first year. How much? Is that 29,450? $31,500? That's 760. Sure. I can't use this type. Give me the same calculator. 1 divided by 1.06 power 1 into 500. 29,760. Let's take 770. 29,770. Clear? If I prepare the ledger account for this situation at the end of the first year, I am talking about the first year, it was started with 30,000. Is that clear? So, sorry, it's a liability, right? Liability, financial liability at fair value through P&L. Clear? The closing balance was calculated. This fair value through P&L, right? Not amortized value method. 29,717. Okay. Therefore, you have 287, 83, 283. Am I correct? 283 gain in profit and loss. Agreed? Right. Gain in profit or loss. Now, this assume this is the market interest rate. This is the market interest rate when you issued. Right? Okay. Let's take two companies, A and B, two companies. They both want to issue the same bond. Now this is the theory of the bond. Assume that's the theory. Now both companies wants to issue the bond. Clear? There is a famous company A, well established, highly profitable, highly strong company A. This is newly established, right, less famous company. Can they both issue the same bond at the same face value, at the same interest? They can issue, nobody will buy. Why? When they are going to issue the bond, people will agree to take it at face value and accept 5%, because it is a famous company. Is that clear? It is a famous company and it has a reputation, and especially their credit risk is very low. Since it is a famous and established, profitable, credit is very low. Therefore, people will accept these conditions. But if I start a company today and issue bonds just tomorrow, are they the same investor will accept my conditions? No, I have to reduce, issue it at a discount price, say 28,000. I have to issue it at a discount value, and I have to pay more interest. Sometimes I have to pay 5.5 interest per annum. Why? My credit risk little bit high when comparing to A, since I am not a famous company. Clear? If you follow same accounting treatment for both companies, different value will be taken into the P&L as the fair value gain or loss. Is that clear? Why? Their opening balance and their opening balance different. Their interest rate and our interest rate is different. People accepted their condition as it is because they have no credit risk. Therefore, this more equal to the current situation of the market. People not accepted B company's bond as it is, they wanted a discount and higher rate. Therefore, this not represent the current market situation. Their rate little bit high. That high amount, that is 0.5, represent their own credit risk. Is that clear? If you followed same accounting treatment for both companies will take two different value into the P&L, right? They will take more into the P&L, they will take less into the P&L. Is that clear? It is unfair. Why? Sometimes less famous, less profitable, high credit risk companies have a huge gain sometime or loss. Therefore, if you ask both them to charge fair value gain into the profit and loss, financial statement not comparable. Got it? Therefore, what you need to do? The additional impact he faces due to their own credit risk shall be recognized in other comprehensive income. Then you can easily compare your P&Ls. That is the point he is discussing. Now, let us take the point. Right, Suraj? In a major changes from IAS 39, the new guidance on the IFRS 9 requires when an entity designates the financial liability at fair value through P&L, the changes in fair value that relate to changes in the entity's own credit risk status are normally presented in other comprehensive income. The purpose is to enhance the comparability. Is that clear? The additional impact faces due to the own credit risk will be located in a separate room. It is the OCI room, not the P&L room. Then you can easily compare both A and B companies. This is eliminate the counter-intuitive effect that would otherwise arise, that the poorer the financial condition of an entity, the higher the discount rate. Why? When financial condition become poor, credit risk will increase and discount rate will increase because you have to pay more interest. Is that clear? For an example, if government issue bonds and a private company issue bond, private company wants to pay more interest. Then if they both recorded their financial liability at fair value through P&L, right? You cannot compare government P&L and even now we cannot compare, right? Don't think about that. But with that accounting treatment, we can't compare government P&L and the private sector P&L because they have used different rates. Definitely that private sector having higher rate, since they have higher risk. That's why in the CAPM model also you add in the risk premium with the beta impact. Clear? That additional risk part, the credit risk part, you will taken into the other comprehensive income. This means that under IFRS 9, entities will typically have to determine the changes in fair value of the financial liability as a whole, and then perform separate computation to determine changes in fair value that is attributable to changes in their own credit risk. That part will recognize in other comprehensive income. Now the point is how to calculate this. That is the most important part, right? How we can calculate this. You have to go to beginning. At the beginning of the financial instrument, you know what is the market rate at you issue it. Clear? Let's take how to calculate this. Look at the first pictorial presentation. Starting of the reporting period. Is that clear? Beginning. You know what is the amount you collected as cash inflow at year 0, and you know what are the expected future cash outflows when you are going to settle it. That is your own cash flows. If I take my previous example, company B, they will be collected only 28,000, while A collecting 30,000 face value, because B discounted their bond to issue it. To attract customer, they have discounted. Poor financial position, poor credit risk, right? They want to discount to attract customers, right? Otherwise, customer not buy the bond. Got it? Right? Therefore, their initial cash inflows as well as future cash outflows will differ from the strong company. If you calculated your own IRR for your own instrument, is that clear? You can calculate separate IRR, but same time you have a market interest rate. That difference is the additional rate you introduce into the bond due to your credit risk. Here, this is the instrument IRR, this is the instrument entire IRR, this is the benchmark interest rate at the market. Difference is the additional part you attach to your bond, that's called instrument specific IRR. Is that clear? Let's take a small example for this, right? You need to support me, right, with the calculations. Assume in a country there is a standard format for bond. A bond value is 1,000. Clear? It's a certificate. නිකන් හිතනකො මේවා කඩවල් වල තියෙනවා විකුණන්න. මුහුණත 10ක් ගහලා තියෙනවා අපිට ගිහලා කඩෙන් අරන් ඇවිල්ලා සීල් එක ගහලා දෙන්න තියෙන. මිනිස්සු 10 ගානේ අපිට දෙනවා. Right? And stated it as 1,000 worth bond. There are two companies. Company A, strong company, and company B, weak company. Weak is credit risk very high. Strong means credit risk very low, right? When they are going to issue bond, 2-year bond, right? Say market interest rate 10%. Today at market 10%, that is benchmark rate. Since they are strong, investors easily attract to the company. Year 0 they will collect 1,000, no issue. Got it? And they will agree to pay market interest rate. First year they pay 100, second year they pay 100 plus. Principal no need to pay premium because they are a strong company, right? Clear? Now tell me what is the IRR for this cash flows? It will be 10. It will be 10. මම ඒක තමයි බලන් හිටියේ මොකද කරන්නේ කියලා. ඒක හදයිද කියලා. දැන් කොහොමද 10න් හදලා බැලුවක මම NPV 0. Right? IRR will be 10. ටිකක් වෙලා හදලා කල්පනා වුණා නේ. IRR will be 10. Clear? But weak company. අපි වගේ අය newly qualified chartered accountants, no reputation. දැන් අපි අලුතෙන් qualified වුණා මෙහෙමනේ මාකට් එකේ දන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ගිහලා කියන්න ඕන කාටද මම chartered accountant කෙනෙක් කියලා. නැත්නම් මිනිස්සු දන්නේ නැහනේ. පරණ chartered accountant ලා ගියාම පාරේ යනකොට දන්නවා he's a chartered accountant නේ. දැන් ඔයාලා වුණත් හිතන්නකෝ හෙට qualified වෙනවා. institute එකට එනකොට security uncle හිතන්නේ මොකද්ද? අර හැමදාම ඇවිල්ලා රෑ එළි වෙනකන් නිදි මරාගෙන පාඩම් කරන කොල්ලානේ. මේ qualified වෙලා එන්නේ. එහෙම හිතයි. ඒ වගේ newly established company. හරි? Can they issue at par? Investor won't be able to attack. Therefore, you have to issue it at a discount value. Year 0, you will issue it at 600. But you have to pay interest on the face. You will pay interest year 1, 100. And year 2, 100 plus. You will pay capital. At least you have to agree to pay a premium. Say you will pay 10% premium. Therefore, you 1100 you will repay. Now tell me now don't say it is IRR 10, right? Tell me the IRR for this. First calculated for 10%, right? Here 1, here 1 divided by 1.1, here 1 divided by 1.1 power 2. Tell me the present value at 10%. How much? Right? Now we are talking about liability side. If it is the investor, this is plus, right? Because this is a receivable, this is a payable, right? Okay, it is 483. Let's take 20%, 25%, 30%. Better to take 30%. Here, if you take 30%, $600, 77, not enough. 50%. 67, 533, not enough. 5 to 33 and 63, enough. Exactly zero. 533, 533, exactly 600. Exactly 600. Therefore 0. IRR 50. Clear? The IRR 50%. The IRR 10%. Right? If you take benchmark interest rate at the issued date, no difference between these two. Therefore, no entity specific, instrument. Instrument is specific IRR. No, but other instrument. If you take this, clear? Instrument or entity, credit risk specific IRR. How much? 40%. Clear? Therefore, when you discount your financial asset annually, let's see this presentation again, Suraj. Here, calculate the IRR for the bond minus benchmark interest rate. Then you have instrument specific IRR. According to my example, it is 40% for the company B. Then when it's come to the year end, you know you had 40% additional IRR, take it, instrument specific IRR 40%, and take year end benchmark rate. The total is your discount rate. Is that clear? Total will be your discount rate. If company A, no instrument specific IRR, therefore they will discount by the market rate at the year end. But company B will discount by a additional rate. When they discount by additional rate, it's a financial liability, they will have more gain in P&L. Is that clear? They will have more gain in P&L. When discount rate increasing, value will decrease. We are talking about financial liability. When the discount rate increasing, what happen? Financial liability will, when discount rate increasing, financial liability will decrease. When financial liability decreasing, the gain in P&L is more. But company A will discount not by an increased rate, normal rate. Their gain is very small. The loss making company, less attractive company has a huge gain in P&L. Higher attractive company has a small gain in P&L. Now it is not fair. Therefore, additional gain created through that additional 40% discount rate shall be recognized in other comprehensive income. Is that clear? That is a requirement. Therefore, next stage explain, end of the reporting date, future cash flows will be discounted by the calculated discount rate. Calculated discount rate will be differ from entity to entity and their instrument to instrument due to their specific credit risk, right? Then you will have a present value of the future cash flows, clear? Once you discount by your rate, you created rate, you will have the present value of the cash flows. At the same time, you have a fair value. Fair value may be the company A's value. Why? Company A calculated according to the market rate. You have your own value. Difference is the change in fair value attributable to change in the own credit risk. This part will be recognized in other comprehensive income. What do you think? Is it can be tested? Definitely. The reason is this was tested in BFR paper in last June. Can you believe? I don't know why that examiner tested like this. You had a very easy question for financial instrument in CFR paper. It's the initial recognition of available for sale into the fair value through OCI. That was the question you had. But BFR student had this story. I don't know why they have changed that to questions. It would be your question in BFR and their question in CFR. Therefore, definitely it will be in CFR this time, I think. This is highly technical. You need to know your financial management knowledge also. This talk about the financial management. Clear? Right. That is the end of that special requirement. Here a small example. Entity A issued bond under condition that qualify for fair value through P&L option and decided to designate the liability to be accounted for fair value through P&L. At the end of the financial reporting period, entity A determines 2 of the change in the fair value of the bond of 10 is due to change in the entity's credit risk. Total fair value change is 10. Out of that 10, 2 was the change due to entity on credit risk. Entire 10 will debit into the liability to reduce the liability. Out of that 10, 8 goes to profit and loss. Additional 2 they created due to their own risk will recognize in other comprehensive income. Is that clear? Right. Okay, that's all about it. Thereafter amortized cost, you know it is very easy because amortized cost financial liability means the vice versa of the amortized cost financial asset. When asset in the debit side, liability is in the credit side, you recognize the interest on the opening balance and debit into the P&L, credit into the asset. So, liability, the amount paid in cash will reduce from the liability, then you have the amortized value. No specific treatment for financial liabilities at amortized cost, because the vice versa technique of the financial asset, right. Okay, that's all about the basic requirement of the financial instrument. This document I will give them to upload, right. Then you can take both this and the I already completed SLFRS 16 also, right. I not yet given this to document because I need to make some adjustments to the wording and everything. Then most probably within mid of this next tomorrow Friday, right, you can collect these two documents from the website, from the LMS. I will ask them to upload these two documents, both SLFRS 16 and SLFRS 9. Then I will take additional examples tomorrow to discuss about the financial instrument. Thereafter I start IFRS 15. Thank you very much.